Hi, I'm Steve. By being God, Jesus by default is the greatest storyteller. In the last video, I shared how I came up with the theme of my manga. In this video, I'll show you how I outlined the story for my manga, using what I learned from analyzing how Jesus told his stories. So if you're like me and struggle to keep your manga story details focused, hopefully this helps. The outline goes like this. There is a familiar/relatable character. In a familiar/relatable setting. Doing something. When suddenly something unexpected happens that exceeds or ruins characters' expectations about life and what they're doing. Which stirs up a pursuit for something that represents a belief that's for, or counter to the theme. So they leave the familiar setting to go to an unfamiliar setting? In the unfamiliar setting, the characters gets what they want, and does what they can with it to fulfill their desire. But they encounter a problem that exposes a major flaw in their belief. So they make an attempt at a solution to overcome the problem. But the character is severely humbled. Hitting rock bottom makes the character examine their beliefs, which results in them fully embracing the story's theme. With this new outlook, the character comes up with a new solution to confront the problem, which results in an outcome that aligns with the theme and a resolution that is thought-provoking. Now, let's see it in action.
There is a familiar, relatable character.
Before the start of any story, Jesus knows his audience. Based on what he wants to say to them, he tells a story to suit. There are a number of stories Jesus tells where the people he's talking to become the characters of the story in some way. This is what makes the characters of the stories relatable. They take on particular qualities of the audience. In the prodigal son parable, younger son equals the sinners. Older son equals the Pharisees and teachers of the law. The father equals God/heaven celebration. Based on what they do and what happens as a result, the characters of the story will illustrate the message Jesus wants to teach. Because the character roles are familiar to the audience, they will have expectations as to how each character would behave within the story. This helps if you intend to surprise the audience like Jesus did with the father character. The father did not behave in a way the audience would have expected.
In a familiar, relatable setting.
Every story Jesus tells, his audience easily knows and is familiar with its setting, like a field, a fishing boat, or someone's kitchen. This doesn't mean you can't tell a story in a different time or world, there just has to be something about the setting your audience understands.
Doing something.
Every story has the characters doing something of that makes sense to the character and related to what the story is about. Like the parable of the sower, the farmer is sowing seed.
When suddenly something unexpected happens that exceeds or ruins characters' expectations about life and what they're doing.
This can look like in the prodigal son story, the younger son, after asking for his inheritance early from his father, gets it. Or the parable of the lost coin, the woman lost her silver coin somewhere in her house.
Which stirs up a pursuit for something that represents a belief that's for, or counter to the theme.
In the prodigal son story, the something, for the younger son is to move far away. Whatever it is the character wants, that something will always have a belief behind it that motivates them to want it no matter what. I believe the belief behind moving far away is, I don't need you and I can do whatever I want with no consequence.
So they leave the familiar setting to go to an unfamiliar setting.
This can be a physical move. Like the prodigal son moving far away. But unfamiliar doesn't need to mean a different location. In the parable of the lost coin, the woman is still in her home, but realizes she doesn't have all of her money. In this way, the setting has become unfamiliar to her.
In the unfamiliar setting, the character gets what they want.
Within this unfamiliar setting, the character has to do something first in order to get what they want. For example, in the parable of the hidden treasure, the man sells everything he owns to buy the plot of land, so that he can get the treasure he found and buried in that plot of land earlier in the story.
And does what they can to fulfill their desire.
Most of Jesus' stories end once the characters get what they want because it's usually at that point, Jesus gets his message across. But in the prodigal son parable, we see what the younger son does with his freedom.
But they encounter a problem that exposes a major flaw in their belief.
The younger son's wild and fast living leaves him with nothing to support himself when hard times come.
So they make an attempt at a solution to overcome the problem.
Because the problem threatens to take whatever the character has away, the character desperately tries to hold on to what they got. In the parable of the prodigal son, the younger son finds a job feeding pigs. Or another example, in the story of the rich man and Lazarus, the rich man asks Abraham to send Lazarus to come and give him some water.
But the character is severely humbled.
The character failing to overcome the problem highlights how bad of a spot the character has put themselves in. In the parable of the prodigal son, getting the job during the famine does nothing to help him survive. The younger son becomes so desperate for food, he's willing to eat the pig food, but even then, he gets nothing. In the story of the rich man and Lazarus, Abraham makes the rich man aware of the chasm between them, making his request impossible.
Hitting rock bottom makes the character examine their beliefs, which results in them fully embracing the story's theme.
There's really nothing left for the character at this point to do other than come face to face with the belief that got them there. In the prodigal son, the younger son realizes that he already had it pretty good back home with his father but left it all behind.
With this new outlook, they come up with a new solution to confront the problem.
The younger son decides he'll return to his father, confess his sin, renounce being his father's son and become one of his servants. In the story of the rich man and Lazarus, the rich man pleads with Abraham to send Lazarus to the rich man's family to warn them so they don't end up in the place of torment, where he is.
Which results in an outcome that aligns with the theme and a resolution that is thought-provoking.
In The Prodigal Son, the father embraces the younger son and throws a party, overjoyed with the son's return. The older son, however, isn't happy because he believes the father is playing favorites. In Rich Man and Lazarus, Abraham tells the rich man that sending Lazarus is useless. If the rich man's family refused to listen to Moses and the prophets, even someone rising from the dead wouldn't convince them. Because they are just another way to tell a story, I'll show you how this outline applies to comics and manga. I'll be using the first chapter of Dragon Ball as my example. Spoilers if you haven't read it yet.
A familiar and/or relatable character, in a familiar and/or relatable setting, is doing something.
The story begins with a young boy in the mountains, doing his chores.
When suddenly something unexpected happens that exceeds or ruins characters' expectations about life and what they're doing.
The boy runs into a girl,
which stirs up a pursuit for something that represents a belief that's for, or counter to the theme.
The girl wants the boy to help her find the Dragon Ball so that she can have a wish granted when all 7 are collected.
So they leave the familiar setting to go to an unfamiliar setting. In the unfamiliar setting, the character gets what they want, and does what they can to fulfill their desire.
The boy agrees and the pair leave the mountains. They journey together in search of the Dragon Balls.
But they encounter a problem that exposes a major flaw in their belief.
They run into a monster that takes advantage of them both, as they believe that this adventure would be problem-free.
So the character makes an attempt at a solution to overcome the problem, but the character is severely humbled.
Because of their naivete, the boy is tied up and the girl is captured so that the monster can fly off somewhere else to eat her.
Hitting rock bottom makes the character examine their beliefs, which results in them fully embracing the story's theme.
The boy realizes he's been tricked and that this adventure isn't going to be that simple or easy.
With this new outlook, the character come up with a new solution to confront the problem, which results in an outcome that aligns with the theme and a resolution that is thought-provoking.
The boy defeats the monster, and the girl is saved with humorous results, leaving the reader to wonder what kinds of situations will this pair get into next, due to the nature of this world. Will you use this framework to outline your manga? I'll leave a link in the description to grab a copy. With the template, I'll provide some examples so that you have references to inspire you if you're having any issues coming up with anything. In the next video, I'll share how I wrote the script for my manga. Thanks for watching and God bless.